Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. Joining me on today's episode is a very special guest, Paul Craig Roberts. He is a research fellow at the Independent Institute and a senior research fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University, and the former Assistant Secretary of Treasury for Economic Policy and a former editor and columnist at the Wall Street Journal. So, Mr. Roberts, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Just fine, thank you.
I want to start off by asking you, we're 16 days out since the tragedy at Utah Valley University. Your thoughts on who you think was responsible for that, because clearly there's some cover-up going on, but we're not getting any answers really as to who was responsible besides the lone shooter narrative.
Right. Yeah, no, we never get an answer. I think it was a professional hit job and not some kook. The official narrative makes no sense whatsoever. It's full of impossibilities, especially the alleged round, the .30-06 caliber bullet, which, according to the surgeon, as reported by Charlie Kirk's, I think, right-hand man, the bullet didn't exit Charlie's neck. Well, this is an impossibility. 30-06 would have probably severed his head right off his shoulders. The exit wound would be enormous. And there's no sign of any such bullet. So we know that's wrong, and we know all kinds of other problems with the rest of the analysis. If there's no bullet, they can't establish that the rifle they say was the murder weapon was actually the murder weapon, because they have to test the bullet with the rifle and see, did that rifle actually fire that bullet? That hadn't been done, and so it's uncertain what evidence they have for arresting this Tyler Robinson. That really doesn't seem to be any real evidence. Now, as to who did it, of course, I have no idea. But there are two possible candidates, both of which have very, very strong motives. And one is just the ruling American establishment. And the reason is that Charlie Kirk was clearly a rising leader, and he had a significant part of the young generation with him. So the generation of the future, the voters of the future, he was their man. And this kind of rising leadership is unwelcome to a ruling establishment that doesn't have control over the leader. And the American establishment never welcomes a leader that they don't have control over. We saw this, of course, most recently with Donald Trump, beginning in 2016. We had Russiagate, Documents Gate, Insurrection Gate, Stripper Gate. We had him persecuted for 8 years, 4 indictments. I don't know how many civil indictments, never-ending media campaign. All of this was a coup to get rid of a leader they had no control over. Well, I think with Charlie Kirk, the ruling establishment had a very good motive to take him out now. Now, I don't know that they did it. I'm just saying they had a motive. Another powerful group with a motive to get rid of him is Israel. And the reason is that Charlie Kirk, when he began, like any American conservative, was firmly in the Israeli camp. That's where all conservatives have been since the origin of the Cold War, since the hoax about the Judeo-Christian ethic which doesn't exist. The conservatives just are aligned with Israel. They don't even think about it. And of course, the Zionist Christians, or the Christian Zionists as they're called, they get it every week from their pastors. So Kirk had started out firmly in Israel's camp, but he started noticing things just like he noticed things elsewhere, and started raising questions about Israel's behavior and what was actually happening in Palestine, and their influence in the United States. And so he was perceived, I'm certain, by Israel as moving the rising generation out of the Israel camp. Well, this would be a disaster for Israel if the replacement generation isn't as firmly under their thumb as the present one. So they had a good incentive to take him out. I think Netanyahu's behavior following Kirk's assassination, it sort of indicates that Israel may have been involved, because he is stressing how firmly allied Charlie Kirk was with Israel. Now, this is after Kirk is actually moving away. And this firm stress on the great alliance Israel had with Charlie Kirk was then followed by Netanyahu's insistence that Israel had nothing to do with it. And this has taken a form of insistence that looks like it's too much. So that's about all I can say about it. I think the original narrative that he was shot from the front through the throat by Tyler Robinson on the roof is obviously false. We haven't heard anything about some enormous exit wound which a 30-06 would leave. People unfamiliar with heavy caliber rifles, 30-06 is a gun that hunters use for grizzly bears, for moose. And the notion that the neck has sufficient bone density to stop a 30-06 is preposterous. So we can throw that away. And then we have the theory that Elon Musk recently explicated in a video that the rifleman was behind him, and the shot came from behind, hit back of his head, and came out the neck. Well, that neck wound isn't big enough to be an exit wound unless the caliber was minuscule, a 17 caliber, maybe. So, and then we have what, to me, so far, seems as the most likely case, the palm pistol case. If you look at that video, it's very, very clear. You can see the person. They should be able to find him without any trouble. And you can see he's right in front of Charlie. I mean, only a few feet. He could probably reach over the railing and touch him. You can see him, he's sideways. He's paying close attention to something. Then he raises his shoulder up and the hand comes up. And you see a slight recoil. And as soon as you can see, as soon as the recoil, you can see Kirk's hip. And then this guy jumps over the barrier and runs to Kirk's aid, which is a clever way to escape. He's one of the guys helping. So I think that should be investigated. If there's a bullet trajectory that supports the rear entrance and front exit, we should investigate that. The thing that I find most puzzling is for quite a long time, we were told they didn't have the bullet. They were looking for the bullet. They didn't have the bullet. So obviously they had no proof that the rifle they say they found in the woods fired the bullet. And then we hear that, oh, there's no exit wound. Well, they only notice that after that much time passes. I mean, that there's no exit wound. How can you not notice that immediately? And then the surgeon says he found it under the skin and the neck. Now, I haven't seen any further explanation of this. I haven't seen officials say this is nonsense and blah, blah, or I haven't seen anybody officially correct this claim. And I still haven't heard anybody say, hey, we got the bullet and it's caliber so-and-so. So if there's no exit wound, then it should have taken them a long time to notice. And if they've got the bullet, they haven't told us what it is. They haven't told us they've done the test to see what rifle it came from. So the whole thing stinks to high heaven. That's about all I know about it, other than that we always get false narratives. And this has all the marks of a professional operation. Now, I remember, and I've reported this many times, James Jesus Angleton, who was the chief of counterintelligence for the CIA, told me one day, I think it was in 1975, that it was when they were holding the church hearings on the CIA in Congress. He told me that when the CIA pulls off an operation, they already have a prepackaged story, and it's immediately released and therefore becomes the explanation before any other explanation can see the light of day. It's set in stone. It's the explanation. Everything else is a conspiracy theory. And he said, we realize that the explanation will have problems. It'll wear thin. And when it wears thin, like the Oswald shooting President Kennedy, we have several more prepackaged explanations. And then we release two of them. And then the people argue about which of those two is the correct one. And they forget all about the fact if the first one was false, that these probably are two. And he says if this goes on long enough through time, the CIA itself doesn't know what happened.
It's insane. It's insane. I mean, but I think what's interesting here is if Tyler Robinson manages to stay alive until a potential, trial, what's going to happen? Because the evidence will have to be introduced. Of course, the round will have to be made public as to what they claim they found. And by the way, they said a surgeon removed it rather than an autopsy being done. And there was police recordings, dispatch recordings released today, which indicated that no autopsy was done, which is legally mandated for a murder in the state of Idaho or in Utah. So how could they possibly worm their way out of this if this kid makes it to a trial?
Well, they can easily falsify evidence. I mean, if the FBI comes in and says, "I test prove this bullet came from this gun we found," who's going to challenge it? Nobody. They can say whatever they want because there's nobody to challenge it. And it's already officially established that if you challenge official narratives, you're a conspiracy theorist and maybe an enemy of the people as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you're spreading disinformation and discord, and it's a terrorist act, perhaps. In other words, it's very difficult to challenge these official explanations. We see that even with when highly placed. You disappeared for a minute. We've seen that even when highly placed whistleblowers come forward, highly credible people, they seldom get very far. They get fired, sometimes prosecuted.
Yep.
So that, but you did raise a very interesting point. Will a Jack Ruby appear? Jack Ruby's the one who killed Oswald very quickly before they could even interrogate him. And so will Tyler Robinson survive? If he dies, they can simply say case is closed. He did it, case is closed. And then people who don't believe that will spend the rest of their life proving that the government lied. People have spent their lives studying the assassination of John Kennedy, studying the assassination of Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King. Or a 9/11. 9/11, that story is completely impossible. It's unbelievable to anybody that had just the slightest scientific education. But you see, you can't say anything about it. If you are a physicist, for example, you know full well the official story is hogwash. But if you say that, you lose all your research grants that mainly come from the federal government. Your department loses them. Your colleagues hate you. They buy you out and send you off. Like they did the one physicist who early spoke out, the physicist at Brigham Young University, who showed that the buildings came down with the use of nanothermite. And if you're a high-rise architect or a structural engineer, you know the official story is false. But if you say it, you lose clients because they say, "Oh, he's on the side of the Muslim terrorists." That's what happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and then eventually, if you do speak out, like Richard Gage, the San Francisco high-rise architect, he spoke out several years later. It took even him several years to realize the story couldn't be true, which just shows how much confidence people have in official statements. You hear something officially, you believe it's the government. Well, he eventually had an organization. I can't remember whether it were 1,500 or 3,000 architects and engineers for 9/11 truth. And it was becoming so highly effective, somebody got to his organization and his organization threw him out.
That's how they always do it.
I haven't heard anything else from architects and engineers for 9/11 truth. Maybe they're still there, but they're invisible compared to their presence when Richard Gage was running it. So they can easily lie their way through it. Just who's to challenge them? And if you do, you don't get the information.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that's another thing Angleton told me. He was, I think, waiting to be interrogated by the church committee. He had come by Jack Kemp, Representative Jack Kemp's office for some reason. And Kemp couldn't see him and told me to meet with him. He was talkative. I think at the time he had been kicked out of the CIA because he was always looking for a Soviet mole in the organization. And it had his internal investigation had the organization so disorganized they kicked him out. They said he was more trouble than the Soviet mole. But nevertheless, they were going to put him through it and see what he would tell them. And so another thing he told me was, he said, the church committee will never find out anything. He said, the CIA will tell them whenever they want to tell them, and they've got no way of knowing whether it's right or not. And it's just a big show. He thought it might, in some way, cause the CIA to be a little more careful.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
well, that's about all I know about it.
Sorry, you broke up for a second. I was saying, I think what's interesting now is there's this, and it could be undone overnight. They are the ones that control the algorithms on these apps, but because of social media and the ease of access on the internet, now instead of waiting years and years and years to question the official narratives and have the evidence to back up these questions, it's happening overnight, just like that. And you have people like Tucker coming out questioning it with his 9/11 series, and you have him obviously questioning the narrative surrounding Charlie's assassination. And I'd like to get your thoughts as a last point on his comments this week. He said that Netanyahu is going around the Middle East and telling these leaders that he controls the United States, he controls the Trump administration. And I believe him because he knows these leaders, these Emirati leaders. He knows them personally very well. What do you make of this?
Well, he's been all of the Israeli prime ministers for as long as I can remember, going back decades, have openly bragged that they control the United States government. I think every one of them has openly said it. Many of them have said, we have no problem with Americans. They report to us. So that's for certain. I mean, the Israelis totally control our foreign policy in the Middle East. That was the whole purpose of 9/11, was to produce the new Pearl Harbor that the Zionists, neoconservatives needed to take us to war against Israel's enemies in the Middle East. You might remember 7 countries in 5 years. And the whole purpose of the war on terror, which was a total hoax, was a cover for American money and American soldiers to be used to eliminate the countries in the way of Greater Israel. We only got 5 of them, and it took 5 countries, and it took much longer than 5 years. It took 20. But they're gone. Syria, Iraq, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, and now Palestine, and essentially Lebanon, because the Israelis have been so successful in assassinating the leaders of the Hezbollah militia in Lebanon that it's essentially disposed of. And since this began, Greater Israel has expanded. It was always from the Nile to the Euphrates. The Euphrates is the river that cuts Iraq in half. So Israel was not just Palestine. It was part of Egypt all the way through the Middle East and to half of Iraq. Well, in the last year, the Israelis have added to Greater Israel and now includes half of Saudi Arabia and all of Pakistan. So, and of course, Iran. And that's the reason we're always on the verge of, shall we invade Iran or not? And it's the reason that Trump attacked the Iranian facilities for Israel. This is an act of war the United States committed against Iran. This is an act of war. So we committed an act of war for Israel. And the real fear is that Israel will soon have us at war with Iran. And this could be far more dangerous than Ukraine, because if Iran were to go into chaos, then jihadists would be funneling into the Muslim areas of the Russian Federation through Iran. The Russians can't permit that. And China would be losing its second most important source of oil. And China doesn't want to be in a position that the United States put Japan in the 1930s by cutting them off from oil in order to force a war. So this situation of the Israeli influence, look, you can see how strong it is. Look, even in red states like Texas and Florida, anyone who criticizes Israel or joins in a boycott, investment boycott, cannot do business with the state. They cannot have a job with the state. They can't have a state contract. Well, these are red states, Republican states, and you offend Israel and you can't do business in those states. Now, what other country has this power? None.
None of them.
None. No. So to pretend they don't have power is stupid. They have tremendous power. I mean, look at the universities now. The students that protest the genocide in Palestine, they get expelled. And if they're foreign students, Trump deports them. Well, is there any other country that if students protest their behavior, that happens to the students? Nope. They can burn American flags all day long. You know, you can't even wave a Palestinian flag.
Can criticize our government, but don't dare touch Israel.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but let me say one last thing. You mentioned the internet.
Yes.
In a hopeful way that there's more people to speak out quicker and question the stories. But you see, the internet, it can be used by everyone, by all sides. And so what you will get will be a large number of fake explanations to further confuse everyone, to create more arguments, to further fragment the issue. Instead of having, I think now we've got 3 explanations. Maybe there are 4 or 5, but 3 main ones. Well, we'll end up with 30, then 300.
Yeah.
And so that's the trouble with the internet, because the CIA or Israel or anybody can have a site on the internet putting out information or using social media. Or so I don't see that the internet will produce a trustworthy explanation. If you look at internet comment sections, you seldom see any intelligent comment. They're almost always screaming curse words at one another, or, you know, they're, 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 they are slandering the author of the article. But it's not, it doesn't show, hey, look, this guy said this. Let's examine it. It's always calling somebody a name, either the author or a different commenter. So it's not a reliable way of finding out anything. So that's about all I have to say about it. Charlie Kirk's death will be bypassed by some other thing, takes over the news.
Yes. Seems like that's where we're headed. Far too many questions, and they're giving us far too many theories. You're right about that. The amount of theories and zoomed in videos I'm seeing, and it's just they want to muddy the waters, and they're doing a good job of it. But the fact is, we know they covered it up. And as you pointed out, we know the official story is BS. So, Paul Craig Roberts, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed speaking with you. And hopefully the internet can be a bit more on point with sages like yourself coming and, giving us your grace for a few minutes on podcasts like this. So thank you so much.
Yes, and thank you. I'm sure your podcast helped. So thank you for having me on. Pleased to have met you.